Jill here with Sirius Dallas Moon, and let's talk about Uranus. Uranus is now on the IC at 27 degrees Taurus, and this is Jupiter hour. Jupiter is 20 degrees Cancer retrograde. The Moon is 9 degrees Leo, about to ingress into the lunar mansion, where is actually very healing. So I'm having my mellow tea there with some calendula, and I want to talk about Uranus and the art of keeping things, like my hair, messy. So when I was in between houses, Uranus, of course, was still in Taurus, and one of the things I really learned with this planet is to allow things to be messy. For example, Uranus in Taurus can be rewilding the garden. And when you do rewilding of the garden, it looks like it's untended to. And while that can create challenges in communication, it really does expose things. For example, people that live in neighborhoods where they were not allowed to, or there were rules against rewilding, which exposes a shit ton of other things, like, do they allow the natural crops to grow? How do we see beauty? Okay, because if we look at Persian gardens, Spanish gardens, French gardens, the orderly, the logic behind putting everything in its place is so meticulous, and having a fence around the garden, that there is so much architecture going into that, and it's really beautiful. That being said, rewilding shows us the naturalness, how do things tend to be coming into order where they're naturally messy? How do plants tend to put shade to other plants so that they can grow? What naturally grows? And how do we find the compatibility between the natural state of the land and our health? Why are we on this land? Okay? For example, I woke up this morning, there was milk thistle. Somebody in my energy was drinking milk thistle, and I'm like, okay, I need to pick up some milk thistle. And this is the natural connection and intuition that arises not always by putting everything in order, but by allowing the mess to be. Uranus, wherever it goes, really loves to, I don't know if create a mess, but its own silly walk creates a mess. And it's not necessarily a mess. What looks messy has a logic of its own, and Uranus is liberating us through that mess. So after I gave the example of the messy garden, one of the best ways perhaps to work with Uranus is, again, the setting intention and release. And Uranus does find almost the exact moment. It can be very liberating when there was an attempt to control the urges of humanity, and bring us back to the eurekas and the urges that are actually not bad for us. For example, let's say waking up in the morning, the urge to, oh, I was dreaming of a milk thistle, let's go pick up a milk thistle, and how everything arranges, whether it's curating something around the endocrine system or the liver, and the way that we naturally find that which is curating. With Uranus about to go into Gemini, we're going to have a different type of mess. And Mercury is also the ruler of contracts, agreements, words, journalism, media, communication, technology, rare earth minerals, minerals in general. The nervous system is ruling with Saturn. Our teeth, our skin, our hair, pictures, colors, um, the skills, the fine arts, the unrefined arts. Okay, it's the skill of practicing an art, the skill of trying something, and those are the things that for the coming 7 years are gonna be a bit messy. And I don't argue, but I invite you to think about allowing that to be messy. Because in allowing something to remain a mess, the creative endeavors can come back to life. If we think about Neptune, within 15 years, we are entering a Renaissance-like period, which means Neptune is going to be bordering between Aries in Aries and Taurus, and Rahu is going to be going between Cancer and Gemini upon the ingress, which is 2038, 2039. And you say, surely it's in a long time. Well, not so. Not so. 15 years, it's only 2 Uranuses. It's Uranus into Gemini, Uranus into Cancer, Uranus into Leo, Renaissance. And that means that we're going to be liberating the energies and the mess around the patronage, around the people, caregiving, fertility, nourishment, food, cooking, and now that we're going into Gemini, so it's liberating from digital prisons, basically. So I was joined into a secret investment group in soil and ground and projects that are to begin. There's city projects that are to begin within the 4 or 5 years, and the conversation I had when they were trying to convince me to be one of the investors, and they were trying to make it accessible because a lot of people can't buy, several houses and so on. So they wanted to sell it as equity. I was like, well, they're gonna bomb these projects. They're gonna bomb these projects. They're gonna bomb this project. Like, and what pointed me to that was, I'm saying I'm looking for a land. Now, I ain't got no money to buy land. Doesn't matter. Do I want a land? Do I want a place where I can live? Yes, amazing. Taking the actions. The money can assemble. I can meet people. I can run into conversation. I can have ideas. Those ideas are dividends. And, for example, just knowing that they're going to bomb these places is worthwhile information. And Mercury is the sign of information. So, I was asking about a place with a land that I can do rewilding without having any authority bothering with that, which I said probably gonna necessitate airspace. I don't need the place to be too big, but it's important for me to be able to have a garden house and the land. When immediately they were like, well, these are going to be apartments, and there was no discussion about land whatsoever. And I'm like, okay, that's 15-minute cities. I didn't have to so much as say so, but we're gonna have Saturn, Uranus, Ketu, which means purging digital persons. And that is going to be with Neptune in Aries. And now we have Saturn, Neptune in Aries, which means new real estate. New real estate. Mercury is going to be closer to Sagittarius, and and also Mars, which means we're going to be building in rural land, or building cities in rural land and bombing old cities. Bombing old cities, but old digital cities, or old cities that are to do with the pantheon, because Uranus can also have to do with the Greek gods, with the decentralized form of divination. So twin cities, um, old cities, old twin cities, and pantheon-related statues or cities that we're going to be purging. And so the projects, they were in cities. They weren't in old cities. But they were in cities that are old, okay? That are not new. While Sagittarius is rural land. While it can absolutely be purging the rural land of the city, which means that those are the projects that are now building. And this is something that I could discern, because when Uranus was going into Taurus, I was like, well, to have a good nervous system, I would need land that is in rewilding, that is messy land. Whereas if I was looking for a really beautiful garden, I would be told, hey, one of the projects is next to a park, and I saw that park. It was really well designed. And so it's a real estate bubble. Okay, it's got a lot of people are going to put a lot of money into these projects. Some of them are going to be expecting to buy. Some of them are going to be expecting to invest. Those are going to be built as digital prisons where citizens might even be targeted in, and then they're going to be bombed. That's going to be profit for people to build in rural land and create new cities in rural land that are way more spacious and are more like the cities that I'm talking about, which means every person has a place to live that is with their land. Freedom, okay? A city where freedom is, and Sagittarius love the country, the countryside. So this is something that working with Uranus can show and can give us, because it allows things to not be orderly, to not go into contractual relationships, to let the words and communication be messy. Or if people even are, let's say somebody got scolded for communication that they put out, okay, whether it's content creation or something like that, and they let that be messy, okay. Within several years, Uranus does work its way to change. And if you noticed, a lot of the delays, Saturn, that are happening even around legal cases, they're not happening for no reason. They're happening because things are changing. Because things are changing, people understand more things and they see things differently. And while it can be a hurdle to, let's say, litigate someone, the understanding that within so and so years something is going to be different, and allowing things to be messy can really liberate a lot of things around certain litigations. For example, I had a friend that litigated for something very, very important, which was borderline human trafficking. It was human trafficking, but she didn't mention it in the litigation. In academia, very important topic. She won the part that she wanted to win in the lawsuit, which is to say the name of the university and so on and so forth. Then I talk about cults. And then, well, she was angry at people like me that we don't go through litigation, but I'm like, but the juristic system is okay in it. And then when I tend to the cult, that lady came from family that was in a military elite, close to the government elite. And so she had to pretend that she doesn't know what I'm talking about. Because it's life risking. And why is that interesting? One of the people she went for help wanted to be a mayor of Tel Aviv and build 15-minute cities and have parking lots that are either above the building or below the building, not compatible with people that went through war trauma, which is agoraphobia and claustrophobia. Now, those type of projects relate to the type of things that she litigated against. And and so this is about leaving things messy, because that mess around the communication, around the litigation, around everything, was beginning to unfold a deeper mess. Because if we were even taking the bigger fight, or the bigger juristic fight, there's somebody not litigating, it's like maybe they're taking a bigger fight. Maybe they are tending to something even bigger than something that you can litigate in the current juristic system. That's a Uranus thing. Uranus and Saturn work very well with time to create contraction and expansion that is liberating of some sorts. Now, when people try to stress Uranus, this is where it comes in its most rebellious, unpredictable ways. When people try to tame Uranus into a structure. So, right now it might not seem like that because Saturn is sextiling Uranus, and it can seem like the structure of Saturn is actually inharmonious with the rebellious streak. So there can be a lot of people that rebel by going into an order form. Okay? And this is where that's the trine and the sextile operate. However, like, let's say if you get married right now because Saturn is sextiling Uranus, it can be good, but don't expect things to stay in a particular frame. So the core issues around that frame will stay if they are the liberation. If they are not the liberation, they will not stay. And so this is where, if you think about COVID, where Saturn was squaring Uranus, there were a lot of delays, a lot of things being a mess around structure and order, because for example, let's say you wanted to go to the dentist. Okay, there were a lot of things that we needed to know. For example, that there was a dentistry torture room in Epstein Island, and who would be the visitors if not the rich people? Who are the rich people? They're also the dentists. Wouldn't you like to know that your dentist could have possibly be getting a kink out of being the participant, whether as recipient or torturer in a torture room in Epstein? Wouldn't you want their license to be a dentist to be ruled out? For example. Wouldn't that be important information? Let's say you're a company and your employees want dentistry insurance. And you say, you know what, let's do a business with a conglomerate that is of an insurance, and so I get to profit off of the bully-collies rather than to just fund them. And everything works fine and well until there are some lawsuits around the companies that you wealth consolidated with that give the dentistry insurance and operations. Because all of them are participating in crimes against humanity once a patient has been tortured. And if that patient, let's say, works in your company, now that's important for both, yes, for both the company, the insurance company, the employees that are, and anybody who is a patient, to know. Without exposing Epstein lists, we wouldn't know that. That's Uranus Saturn. That's Uranus Saturn. And here's the thing, because those things are crimes against humanity, it's not about litigation. You know these people that wear the earrings with the guillotine? um, that dentist is going to be a person who is haunted all their lives. It's not about litigation. It's not about class lawsuits. It's about Nazi war criminals that are litigated, that are not litigated, that are haunted all their lives. So, hey, isn't knowing about these atrocities and not participating in them kind of important? Isn't understanding that the delay around going to the dentist might be just about not, how should I say it, not going for, let's say, a cleanup and then doing the same thing over again, but to actually tend to the issue. How did the teeth got into a situation where they need a dentist? What happened there? Those are the type of things that Uranus calls us, while Saturn calls us to tend to something which is important. But tending to something with Uranus is different, is done differently. Because Uranus calls us to leave something messy. To leave something messy. Okay, for example, my pot here is now ready. And I can drink me some tea. So, because Uranus is liberating us, Saturn will create delays around what we need to know. But Uranus is not adjoining to the traditional, to the constrained, to the Saturnian way. And yet, Uranus can also tend to Saturn in an unusual way. For example, if you think about Saturn as dedication, or as doing something whether we feel like it or not. Uranus can also be, oh, let's wait out Saturn's hour. Let's wait out Saturn's hour. And maple. And that can be a way of tending to Saturn for people that have a challenge. Okay, people that are, let's say, a night chart, and they're more action oriented. And so that can absolutely be a way of tending to Saturn in an unusual way, and by these small steps getting big results. Now, Uranus allows things to be messy because it brings in the revolution in the field. If I take a look at my hair right now, so it went from being beautiful, being messy, being really weird, being not photogenic, being photogenic. If there was a photographer looking at me in this footage, and they would, let's say, capture the screen. Okay, of course, it's all rights reserved, yes? I'm not encouraging you to do that, but let's say I was in a filming session. Every single spark of light, every single frame would be a completely different picture. Uranus is just about that. It's about letting that be messy and not trying to fix anything or to have anything in particular order. And that can create spark of the moment type of almost mythical, whether it's beauty, which with Uranus is an unusual standard of beauty. Let's say a little bit of my hair is going white, okay? Uranus doesn't say, oh, I'm getting old. Uranus say, oh, that's very interesting texture. This is very interesting texture. If I would go to a barber shop to do that, it would probably cost a lot of money. And it allows us to see things from a different perspective. Because of its unusual walk, we have unusual sight to do, unusual senses. Um, and do I have something here? Or is it shade? The brief moment while I look at it. No, it's not. It's shade. um, so, what's being released with Uranus is life energy. Life energy that gets stagnant. Uranus at the end of Taurus can be very relational. Let's say Lai just gave a reading and she mentioned a story about somebody that was into someone and they began to do what they do, whether it's for a living or whatnot. And so, and Spirit was allowing that because even though it was draining on the desired subject, it was because the person had love feelings. And so this can be a situation where, as an astrologer, I would say, okay, what happened here? Whether it's love that is returned or not returned, or whether these people are going to be together or not together, what happened here is that somebody began to do stuff they didn't do before. Maybe that person, whether they stay alive or not, is it can be important, it can be, I don't know, but the fact that, let's say, they began to paint, or they began to sing, or they began to dance, or they began to, I don't know, let's say do astrology, or, that's more important. Because I do have something here. I washed my face, but it didn't help. Okay. That's more important than basically the orderly form of if somebody is going to be together or not together. And sometimes the liberation is even in the other direction, okay? That where it's like, oh, it's not the other things, it's a person. And so, and this is where Uranus can be messy, but it's also touching on the subject of life energy. As an astrologer, I did astrology charts of people that were associated with places where people would do magic to have something that is off the chart of others and embody that. And I saw, because I did it spirit of matter style, and I saw, wait a second, this person has it in their chart, but I didn't know that they were doing, or that they were in societies that are doing this type of occult to try to derive things from others. Okay, to plagiarize others' abilities. And what happened is that I was doing spirit of matter and I was reading the charts and I was like, wait a second. I can notice that this is also, let's say, a person was a comedy actor or an action film actor. I was like, oh, wait a second, they could also be a good dramatic actor. And I was like, yeah, they were also doing that. And I didn't know that before I was reading the chart and so on. And that completely negated the raison d'etre of learning rituals to do, to take, let's say, destinies or, let's say, talents of people. And that doesn't mean that those rituals weren't done. It means that that life energy was drained by a person through rituals, and they did rituals to take life energy from others, where, in fact, setting boundaries to those that took the energy from them, which could have been even their loved ones, their family, their gurus, their teachers, and so on, basically retrieves their own life energy. And and people that maybe even grew up to think that they need to take from others find that no, it's in their origin energies. I've even had places where people try to copy me, and I was like, wait a second. Like, if they're trying to, let's say I do, I don't know, astrology, and somebody tries to copy me, I'm like, okay, maybe they need to learn astrology. They maybe they learn through mimicry. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they have the Uranus in Virgo or in Gemini, and they learn through mimicry. And so, um, but that is, but it's not because they're not, how should I say it? It's not because they're copycats, it's just that the way that they try to do that is of these codes, but it's not that they're not meant to know that or to be an astrologer, for example. Um, what's more, Uranus, the planet of astrology, can also reveal where, I saw it a lot with, there were a lot of social engineering around triangulation. And usually it would be that, let's say it's a man, and a man is mixed with something that is of that sort. Usually it would be that the people that are triangulated have quite some in common. They have a polarity and they have quite some in common. Um, and what do I mean by that is that, how should I say that? That can create various situations. First, emotional relatability. Um, because if somebody is set, I'm sorry, to target someone, then their moon follows the moon of that someone. Now, let's say this someone that was in a triangulation that was love bombed, let's say. They began to absorb love in a place where in the past they weren't. Okay? And the person that was set them up even, um, they began to play the role of a provider emotionally in the relation in a way that is more natural to their moon because they're, let's say it's a man, they're courting emotionally someone. But here is the thing about it, because those type of scams are oriented and coming from um, something very malefic, okay? That can create a situation where the only way to have an actual chemistry with someone was through these scams. And that could create a situation where that person who was supposed to look like a family man, um, or is even genuinely trying to, um, was meshed with a place where somebody was trying to, I don't know, do magic so that they would stay in the relationship. And they would basically inverse moons. Okay? So basically inverse dynamic. Inverse to the nature of the emotional. And that could have met certain needs of, let's say, mothering a partner. Because they could have been needing that, and because of misplaced arousal, they could have even eroticized around that. So that could have been a very intricate issue. Now, Uranus, by leaving things messy, but not trying, let's say somebody been love bombed and they're like, okay, I'm receiving stuff here, but there are other things that I don't like here. What's going on? Oh, wait a second, that person's not even available. Okay, I'll just leave it. I'll just let it be. I'm not trying to get that person. I'm not trying to have an affair with anyone. I'll just, what else happening in my life? Let's just let that be. And let's do whatever is happening in my life. Now, because everybody is in that mess, which means everybody's needs were not met adaptively, then, and everybody's in that confusion, then each party would have their own eurekas of healing something about their relation. One could even be, hey, I'm setting a boundary here. Either you're committed or you're not committed. If you're not committed, I'm going to be with someone else because I want to have a family, I want to have this, I want to have that, and so on and so forth. So they're setting boundary. Suddenly they're not so agreeable. They're not just trying to make someone stay with them, but they set a certain limitation that pertains not only to them, but also to the question of, let's say, family, children, and so on. Another would be, okay, don't think that I'm committing. Don't think that I don't know what to do with this thing. I definitely need love, affection, and so on and so forth. And those things need to be met in their even non-erotic form before I can even decide who I want. Okay? And I'm not committing to anyone, but don't think that you can isolate me, silence me, blame me, make of me third party. No, I was not looking for anyone. And then the real things begin to unravel. What are the real things? Well, the Epstein scandals, the trafficking codes, the rites of passage, the secret societies, what people have to do to have a certification, what people have to do to run a business or to have a home. And they begin to pop up. And so what we would have is the only way people would meet the people that are emotionally and erotically compatible for them in the healthy sense is through trying to set them up. Because in those societies, people had to hurt their loved ones. It's a treason-based society. In a treason-based society, people can't erotically and emotionally relax into a compatible loving relation unless they begin to disentangle from the treason-based society and build something else. Now, or they would have an obstacle or a challenge. Let's say, for example, a gay couple. Okay, so they would have an obstacle or a challenge that they need to push through, and that may have to do with, oh wait a second, we discovered we're gay, we want to be together with. Were you making money for that house trafficking people? Oops, now we're gonna have to disentangle that so they can live happily in a home. Or for example, did you get your separate housing? Let's say it's better for relationships, separate housing, by evacuating someone by spiritual rape. Oops, that person is eligible to that estate. And or if you're like, oh no, they don't, we're gonna fight it. Okay, that means you're going to be performing crimes against humanity, for which you're going to be hunted, not because you're gay, but because you were raping and violating people. And so, and again, I'm not saying that those are true stories. Okay, I'm just giving an example of how Uranus, by leaving things messy, begins to unravel what is actually happening. Okay, Uranus in one's fourth house. All you Aquarius ascendants have Uranus going through your fourth house, which means that your upbringing is being exposed and revealed, but not to constrain rather than to disentangle from. I'm about to have Uranus going through my fourth house in Gemini. And the first thing that happened there was the oil drilling in the Dead Sea next to where I was living was exposed. And then there was 7th of October, and one of my home countries committed a genocide. The other one might have been very adjoined in committing that genocide and depopulation. But it's true. and and that could have explained the housing crisis. Okay, which probably are many more things to unravel. So this is where, by leaving things messy, it dredges up the things that needed to be disentangled so that people can live. And this is where, how should I say that? With Uranus and life energy, things don't stay the same. It doesn't mean that people don't stay together. It means that things don't stay the same. Which means if there was anything, real estate, politics, cults, any issue that was blocking the life energy of people on a collective level, Uranus is going to liberate. Which means if cult-like society is not healthy for the sexual energy, Uranus-Pluto aspects are going to tend to that. Uranus was squaring Pluto, conjoining Aries during the Me Too, where people talked about gaslighting, but people, I think it was 50 Shades of Grey, and a lot of people were triggered because they were like, oh my gosh, they had a partner that was trying to do great, and they didn't see it in sexual liberation. They saw it something as blocking sexual liberation. And that was where the real authentic sexuality began to surface. And that was a vehicle of regeneration. Everybody began to know what gaslighting is, what cult leaders are. And of course, once they recognized that, it's kind of impossible. First of all, the body began to set the boundaries to those things. And so it's kind of impossible, let's say you left the partner because you're gay and that partner was seeking for you to be, or with that partner it would have been a straight relationship, you're gay, okay? You left that partner. You're not gonna date, let's say you're a man, okay? You're not gonna date a woman anymore. Let's say you left the cult. Same. You're not gonna commit. You're not gonna, okay, you're not gonna be emotionally driven to take that to the next level, but only to liberate from that. Anything that tries, and it's pretty much the same. Let's say you're a gay person. If you're a gay person, people try to bind you into straight relationships. That's the same as being in cult-like society, whether it's political, economic, religious, spiritual. And that's just what we're dealing with. So people are not just going to be okay with that. And they're not going to let, how should I say that? Let's say, oh, you find your gay person, you're happy together. Amazing. Where do you live? How come you have a house? Because other people had to rape children to have a house. We know because we didn't agree to rape children. We live in our parents in a rented house because we didn't agree to rape children. And so that's where leaving things messy unravels and disentangles. And in a way it's liberating because nobody really wants to have to rape children in order for their children's children to inherit their house. And those that do, okay, those that want their children to have to rape children, Well, the world needs to disentangle from that. This is why, even when it comes to governments, we have people who talk about, well, we're not going to legalize pedophilia, but talking about curation, because they don't want everybody to go to the guillotine. But it is not about perpetuating. In fact, the intergenerational wealth that doesn't go through to the third generation is because there was no adaptation to the current times. And that means sexual energy, life energy as well. So Uranus is about leaving things messy. And those that try to force what is Uranus into order, they get the worst backlash. Because Uranus is explosion, is bombs. And Uranus also exposes, okay, let's say emotionally, whether one had love or had hatred. And the things that they did from hatred, or they tried to do from hatred, basically, with Uranus is going to expose that. Those societies that had to live on sacrificing others, what's a greater liberation than to confiscate all of their wealth so they're no longer living by sacrificing others or trafficking others? So this form of activity, so the action of torturing, raping, sacrificing, is no longer economic. But this is so. Because to live within those societies is a sitting volcano. Children grow into sitting volcano. Children grow into dissociation. And then the question was done about that. Because to perpetuate this society onto other societies by wealth consolidation that does not make it not economic to rape, to torture, to traffic, to participate, to do lover boy to traffic another, and is from those societies, because they're based on treason. You can't have a monogamous, happy relation, or not monogamous, happy relation, compatible, erotic, non-erotic relation in a treason-based economy. And if you do, it's based on a lot of illusions and bubbles that are popping.